All right, well, I believe that this is everyone that's going to be here today. So I'm just going to start off with saying welcome to our July 8th, 2026 session of the Housing Opportunities Commission. The Housing Opportunities Commission attempts to conduct its meeting in a relatively informal manner within the constraint that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and business-like fashion. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issues before us, avoid unnecessary repetition, and be prudent in the use of time. We want to be sure that we have adequate time to review and discuss all items with equal diligence. Just a reminder to turn phones off, and then so we are not going to meet quorum today. So I am not going to call to order, and we won't do the roll call. We're also going to skip the approval of the meeting minutes. I can open public comment. Is there any public here today that wants to speak? Doesn't look like it. So public hearings, I don't believe there's anything of the such of that. So we're just gonna go forward to the business agenda items, and we're just gonna really do a kind of a discussion of them today, no voting or anything. The first business agenda is the commission bylaws and code of conduct review.
All right. So I don't know most of you. I'm Janessa. I am a deputy city attorney. I've been with the city a little over 11 years. And one of my responsibilities is to meet with our boards, commissions, committees every once in a while, make sure that we're familiar with you. Obviously, I have not been here before, so I am overdue for an appearance for sure. And just for you to get to know us a little bit, make sure that you know that we're available as a resource if there are questions that come up. We are more than happy to take your questions. So always feel free to reach out. But Billy asked that I talk a little bit about some questions that have come up and just a good refresher on things as well. So starting with like duties and responsibilities. I don't know, do you have my PowerPoint up? Okay, that's not a big deal. It's mostly just the ordinance. So one of the things that Billy thought would be important to talk through was HOC's duties and responsibilities, and those are all set out by ordinance. So I don't need to read it all to you, certainly. I trust that you are all perfectly capable of doing that. But the idea of the ordinance is that it guides the work that HOC does. So whatever the constraints are in the ordinance, that is what HOC is bound by. So it's a subject matter specific commission, and so any work that HOC does has to be focused within that and fall into one of those duties and responsibilities that are outlined in the city's ordinances. There's also a purpose and intent, and the idea with that in the ordinance is that your duties and responsibilities that are called out in the ordinance help accomplish the purpose and intent that council laid out for you. So it's the specific helping accomplish the more general is what you see in our ordinance. So if you have questions about this, your scope of responsibility, happy to talk through that. I've got the ordinance language on my laptop. You all don't have the advantage of that at the moment, so happy to take questions if you think of something or in the future at any point. But it doesn't sound like at the moment.
Right now.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Good.
Yeah, I had the videos ready. I forgot about the
PowerPoint. Okay. Good. So I think the fourth slide there is where the ordinance language starts. There you go. So this is copied almost directly from the ordinance. I paraphrased in a couple spots, I think, but generally you're supporting the goals of the council's strategic plan, the comp plan, city manager's work plan, specifically related to affordable housing, reviewing affordable housing policies and provide recommendations and comments to plan commission and city council, recommend affordable housing program eligibility criteria to council, and initiate and recommend guidelines for development of city affordable housing policy, including expanded homeownership and transitional housing opportunities. And the next one, Yeah.
Does anyone have an example of recommend affordable housing program eligibility criteria to council? That seems like something that we'd like to see ingrained.
Mm-hmm.
How does that ever shift or change?
It doesn't, because you guys can keep coming up with affordable housing. So, like, if you, with the funding they put next year, you can decide you want to put it to certain programs or something like that.
Okay.
So, it'll always be something that you guys would review.
So that's about the actual affordable housing, not the candidate, not a person, not a household.
Right, that's just the eligibility criteria for, like, the matrix.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Can I ask a question related to
Yes.
this? Thanks. And then also just a quick reminder, because I know when I've tried to watch recordings afterwards, if people aren't using their mics, you cannot hear anything. So quick reminder to use your mics. But I did want to just ask, within the ordinance, it doesn't specifically like refer to the flexible housing fund, which the matrix is developed to help oversee and allocate funds from. I don't know, is there a need to enshrine that within the ordinance at all, or does that fall into one of the buckets that are on this screen?
I think you could safely put something like that into like the initiate and recommend guidelines category related to city affordable housing policy or your eligibility criteria, something along those lines. I think you can safely categorize it there without calling it out, because something like that, depends on the budget every year. So to enshrine it in ordinance might
Sure.
help.
Thank you.
So then on the next slide is where you find your work plan that you put together every year that goes to council for approval. That's one of your duties and responsibilities. Providing advocacy for establishing and maintaining a diversity of housing types and opportunities in the city is one of your responsibilities as well. And then promoting greater community understanding and acceptance of affordable housing through public education and public events. So you do have some outreach advocacy responsibilities there as well. All right. And then finally, review and advise the City Council on affordable housing priorities in the CIP that goes forward annually, and explore strategies to minimize the cost of utilities, parking, and transportation as factors that could impact affordability of housing. So those are what is spelled out for you in ordinance. So all your work would fall into one of those categories. And then as far as purpose and intent, like I was saying earlier, your specific duties and responsibilities achieve the purpose and intent. So more broadly, you're looking at recommending and reviewing ordinances. You're facilitating access to programs and funding, which could be for a variety of individuals, or list developers and builders as possibilities as well. Promoting public-private partnerships that stimulate the development and revitalization of local housing. Reviewing civic strategies that increase homeownership opportunities, and I'm sure you're all aware as well of this requirement to regularly convene a regional community of stakeholders to share commission progress. So that's your annual conference that I know Billy has talked about before. Yeah. All right, so that's the ordinance. Like I said, questions now or at any time in the future is absolutely fine. I know that's a lot of information to think through just on the spot. So, but otherwise, Billy also asked me to talk about ethics for public officials and some open meetings law. So my office has put together some training videos recently that I'm gonna use you as guinea pigs on for a little bit. So we'll see what you think of them, and I would be very interested in feedback because we haven't made them broadly available yet. But we have one specifically on ethics for public officials and the one specifically on open meetings law, so I thought those would be a great fit. So I think Billy has those queued up.
Do you want open meetings first or ethics?
Let's do ethics first.
Welcome to another episode. Today our
Can you just put it on the screen?
discussion is ethics. Slide it up to the water. City Attorney's back.
I'm back.
Great to
Yes.
see you again.
You too, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So ethics,
important topic, obviously. We want to operate the city of Eau Claire with
There you
high
go.
integrity. So the last couple sessions on open meetings, public record, a lot about transparency. And that
It's
is
quiet, but I can hear it
one
with the
of key
subtitles.
ways you build integrity and trust in our government. But the other is to maintain high ethical standards, and that certainly starts with not violating ethical state statutes or even criminal statutes. So we're gonna help tell you about some of those things so you know they're out there and avoid violating them. Because some of them will probably seem pretty obvious, certainly should. Some little harder sometimes to identify and avoid. So Janessa, why don't you talk about some of the key concepts under state law that our public officials need to avoid doing to remain ethical?
Yeah, it's kind of a list of canons, if you look at the state statute. So there is a chapter of state statute that governs public official ethics, chapter 19.59, if you want to go take a look at it. But of course, you're welcome to ask us questions too, we encourage that. So one of the big cannots, you cannot do something that's going to result in personal gain for yourself. Seems pretty obvious around that one, right? But it is something that you can get in trouble for. Any of these things, they are not only consequences of a fine if you're found guilty of them, but you can end up paying attorney's fees to the state for any of these violations that we're going to talk about, and then potentially criminal as well. If found guilty, it would be a felony offense, and so it's really something worth taking seriously. So big one, personal financial gain, not permitted.
We'll try to include some takeaways in all of these, but one of them, on especially this that I like to point out is, if you think that you are taking action on an issue that is motivating more to you personally than to the broad public, that you are not applying your public policy best choice for the city, but that a considerable portion of your decision is being influenced and benefit to you, that is, a red flag. That is something that you should consider, probably consider giving us a call to work through the issues and see if we can provide you an ethics opinion. And you may have had this later, but now that I've said it out loud, this is one of those areas that while we represent the city of Eau Claire as its entire organization and can't usually provide you individual legal advice confidentially, ethics opinions are one of the exceptions. We can provide that confidentiality, and it would be a substantial defense against any claim that you may have against you that you did make that consultation. So it's really important that you reach out and ask us if it starts feeling like it's moving into that somewhere in between some of your personal interfering with or overcoming your public official responsibility.
It's one of those few times when attorney-client privilege actually applies even in a government setting. So take advantage of that if you need to. What would somebody do if they did have a conflict? What would be the outcome?
Well, certainly one of the things you should need to do if you have a conflict is recuse yourself or step away from that decision. If there's an item that's before your board or committee or commission that you have a personal involvement with, don't participate in the discussion. You can recuse yourself, I think most preferably physically, by simply stepping down. You can stay in the room, but remove yourself from that sort of public official position. If you're in the council chambers, step down from the dais, sit out in the public, or just wait back. Secret, there's a mini fridge back there, and enjoy a
Have
hot snack. And come back in when that agenda item is passed. And at a bare minimum, you have to abstain from the vote, and you also need to abstain from the discussion. It is not sufficient to abstain from an item. Thoroughly be involved in the debate, discussion, move, or attempt to motivate
think maybe you've seen at a family reunion, that's not the type of family relationship we're talking about. We're talking about one that you regularly are interacting with that might have a financial impact on you in particular, where you know, either it's gonna impact you because it's the same household where that income is going to, or it's just such a close relationship that it's going to make a difference for you. And those would be the types of circumstances where, again, you'd wanna recuse yourself like we were just talking about.
Substantial financial support is the key issue, so legally, even a grown child that isn't in your house anymore, somewhere else, is not gonna be a legal conflict. This is another good spot to let you know why conversation with us can help. Because, say a 30-year-old child that's still living in the community but not living with you, that's not gonna be a legal conflict. It might still be a perceived conflict, and we'll help you understand that difference, and ultimately that choice will be yours. But a 15-year-old still living at home with you would be a legal conflict if, for some reason, that they had that financial interest and you did not, early entrepreneur or something like that. But sometimes that comes up, and it can come up with businesses or nonprofits as well, that you may not have that equity ownership or be on the board of a business or a nonprofit, which definitely would then connect back to you and require recusal or require an abstention. But if there's still a strong enough tie to it, it may have a perception of that, and you'd strongly want to consider abstaining.
And it wouldn't have to be just a financial interest necessarily either. It could be something that you feel really strongly about. Maybe you are on the board of a nonprofit, for example, that you are just really passionate about that, and so you care about the outcome of it more than just beyond what the public interest would say.
Exactly. One of the examples I've used over the years is there's a project on your street, and people will ask, does that mean I need to abstain from some sort of vote? Not necessarily, but it is one that is close. So you'd have to ask, is this project affecting you the same way it's affecting everyone else on your street or in your neighborhood? Or does it have unique, specific effect to you or, again, a family member or business and nonprofit that you're involved in? Is it that broad community impact where you are similarly situated as others? Or is it very specific just to your driveway apron and no one else is being updated or something like that? So a lot on that one, and that is usually where we get most of them, but there are other restrictions, right?
There are.
Like if
There are more to the cannot list.
you're gonna say I cannot, we were gonna be counselors with coffee or
I don't drink coffee. We were gonna be lawyered up.
lawyered with lager. So how about somebody who's coming before your board committee or commission, and you're out for a beverage of whatever preference you might have, and they offer to pick up the tab. Is that okay?
Well, why are they picking up the tab? It matters, right?
It does.
Absolutely. If they're your good friend and that's something that you regularly do, probably perfectly fine. But if they have like a license application coming before you that you're gonna be voting on, that's not gonna look good, right?
Right. And beyond just not looking good, so it definitely could, and folks won't necessarily know whether that's the first coffee they've picked up the tab for, or the fourth or fifth. But there's that perception issue, and you cannot accept anything of substantial value, and that then moves into the legal issue. That is not specifically defined in state law, but we've had Attorney General advice that has indicated that amount can be as low as $20. Now, we have really great coffee shops in town, and most of you can probably get 4 or 5 coffees for that price, but that is simply guidance. And again, if other members of the public see someone who's coming before your board committee or commission, grab even that $1 $5 coffee for you, the perception is bad. And if it's not just the coffee, or it's not just the beer, but it's a beer and a ticket to the Express or an event at the Pablo or Sonanteg, that is definitely going to exceed that, and something that you have to politely decline. Or you can still go out, you need to pick up that ticket
You
price.
just pay for it yourself.
And some inquire about what the fair approximate value is and pay it, even if there isn't a ticket price, or simply decline, because otherwise you're violating that statutory rule that prevents you from accepting anything of substantial value, substantial sort of read in with the Attorney General advice on matters that are before or could come before your board, committee, or commission.
And same thing if it's already been in front of your board. You can't accept it as, hey, thanks, I really appreciate how you voted
Yeah,
on
way to go.
something. You can't say, I appreciate your thank you gift, thanks, you know,
Right.
great coffee. Can't
Neither
do
the
that
keep
either.
it fair or thank you for having kept it fair.
Right.
Neither way. What else do folks need to watch out for?
Well, same thing, or a similar concept anyway, you can't promise to vote for a certain way in exchange for a payment. Also not
That sounds like
permitted.
bribery.
Yeah, you could call it that.
Can't do that.
Yeah, frowned on, for sure, illegal also. You can't, engage in financial or, criminal misconduct in general, you know, that's a good rule. But misconduct in office is really what it would come down to. And like I was alluding to earlier, talking about felony offenses, that's one of them. So it's something to avoid. We never wanna hear those words in relation to any of our public officials, but it is something really important to be aware of.
Another one to remember, and this will often come up sort of at worst moments, so it's good to internalize and then remember not to do it. You can't use your title or position for anything of substantial value. So the do you know who I am line, just remove that. Because folks may not have known who you are before you uttered that phrase, but they likely will after you make that bad decision. So whether it's you know, in a trying to be helpful sort of way, or certainly if it's in connection with any kind of law enforcement activity, your position or title with the city cannot be used to try to influence the decision of others, whether it's city employees, law enforcement, or members of the public. That's not the role any of us have. So, especially on boards, committees, and commissions, where most of the time the role is advisory, make sure that phrase is not being used or won't serve you well.
What if I just really care about a park in particular, and I care how it's maintained? Can't I tell the staff that they need to do a good job taking care of it?
We appreciate the care and concern, but the best way to do any of those sort of comments is add a notice board meeting, or perhaps an email of thanks or concern at a later time. But otherwise, don't use your title in any way that you think is going to be deriving any benefit. Any others? I think
we covered at least the high points for sure. There are more certainly, but these are, I think the big ones to be aware of.
I'm gonna raise one more, and that is bidding. We have a city purchasing manager, but this is one that can come up occasionally too, is please don't participate in any kind of procurement or purchasing process. That is another one that can have criminal implications, especially if you or a business you're involved with is participating. Even if you recuse yourself, if you participated earlier in the process, that can be a criminal violation. So it's one of the reasons we use professional purchasing agents, and that process is something that really is not going to come before our board committees and commissions anyway. It's done in-house by our purchasing agents, and then moves on to city council. So a lot of ground there, an important issue both for you individual and also for the integrity of our city. Thank you so much for your service and attention on this important issue.
All right, so that was our first one. Any feedback on the video in general? Like I said, you guys are guinea pigs for it, so appreciate any thoughts that you might have before we distribute it more widely, but also if you have any questions that generated. If not, that's okay too. We can move on.
Well, I understand we got
Sorry, are you having us sign any documentation stating that we were made aware of this at all, anything going forward?
So there is a code of conduct. I'm not sure if that's been distributed. Does that sound familiar?
On Shay would have sent you an email when you were, after you were voted on by council.
Okay,
It would have included all that.
okay, sounds good.
Yeah, it didn't require, you didn't have to watch the videos as part of it or anything like that, but there is a code of conduct that commission committee members have to adhere to, and, part of that is acting ethically. So, good timing, I guess, to get the video in with respect to that. Yeah. Okay. Then the other one that Billy thought I should touch on is related to open meetings law. So I think this is my colleague. So Steve, our city attorney, is on the screen, and then we have another attorney in the office, Blake Herbison, who I believe did the filming on this one. So you'll see those two.
Well, I understand we got picked up for a second episode. Thanks, fans, for calling in, asking for just at least one more. So, episode number 2, we've got a new guest.
Hello.
Blake Herbison is with us. Hi,
Yes.
Blake.
Hello, Steve. It's nice to be here. Assistant City Attorney Blake Herbison. So I've been with the city for about a year and a half at this point. And I'm happy to be here to help kind of walk through open meetings law on this particular episode.
Last episode, we did kind of a broad overview of a lot of things that come at you when you are a city local public official. Thank you again for doing that work. One of the top issues is that you are working in a public environment, and so that means application of the open meetings law. It is a state statute that really is just there making it clear that our work is the work of our residents, the public, and that we do almost all of that work in public. And to facilitate that, to let the public know what is being reviewed, discussed, and decided, certain things apply to any of the meetings that we might hold. So we're going to talk about some of those key factors of what that means for meetings that you work with staff to establish and that you attend yourself. One of the key things is just what a meeting is. Blake, you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, it seems like it would be pretty straightforward what a meeting is, but when it comes to open meetings law, it's important to keep in mind that it relates to your public governmental body, the number of you who are part of that body, and whether you're coming together in an in-person format or potentially even outside of a formal boardroom or even a physical presence. That meeting definition can start to apply. So in basic, it just means if you're meeting in a sufficient number with the purpose of exercising your BCC's authority in some way, shape, or form, then
BCC jargon.
BCC, boards, commissions, and committees. So if you're meeting together in a sufficient number, then we trigger open meetings law, and the rest of the requirements related to open meetings apply. And that can include, as we'll get into it, public notice requirements, requirements related to agenda settings and subject matter that you can discuss, and the location and welcoming nature of those meetings.
Say you're not at City Hall, you're down at a local watering hole shop, coffee shop, something like that, and you see a few of your friends and colleagues on one of your boards, committees, or commissions. What if, say, 3 or 4 of you get together for a cup of coffee, and maybe you're talking a little bit of business, maybe you're just talking a little bit of blue gold basketball. What does state law say about attendance of members even in that type of social setting?
For sure. Well, and I would like to think that those sorts of social settings are going to happen naturally. Obviously, a lot of our members of BCCs have similar interests, so you're very likely to see one another out in the community. So in the first instance, the open meetings law would say that a social gathering or a chance gathering is not going to trigger the open meetings law requirement. You're perfectly fine with meeting in a social setting. What our office would recommend in that case, so if you do happen to bump into other board, committee, commission members, would be to avoid talking about the subject matter that your boards, committees, and commissions relate to. So keep it social, keep it a chance gathering, and keep your business for the city under a publicly noticed meeting.
And one of the things to keep in mind is, while that might be your intent, we expect that it would be, other people that are coming by in that coffee shop don't know that. And the law has presumption. So if it is 4 of you together for coffee and you are on a 7-member board, you are holding a meeting whether you intend it or not, because there is a presumption of a meeting status if a majority or more are present. So definitely be aware of that majority status, but it also applies even in some other scenarios where you get close to that majority. So we have long recommended on council, a board of 11, that if 3 or more are meeting together, to consider that notice. And that's because in certain votes, even 3, 4, where we have supermajority requirements and either 8 or 7 votes are needed to pass an item, that group is large enough to prevent passage. So for those situations where a meeting is intended, you've got a scheduled meeting coming up of your board, committee, or commission, there's really 3 watchwords to look for on what we need to comply with the open meetings law. And that's public notice, an agenda, and location. So in terms of public notice, Blake, what is required, and why do we put out public notices for our meetings?
Well, a public notice, it's required that your meeting is noticed at least 24 hours in advance of gathering together. There's some limited, very limited exceptions.
We got a
to
2-hour
that.
emergency
Yeah, the
exception,
2-hour
but
emergency
we
exception.
definitely expect a 24-hour minimum,
Yeah.
and in most cases, we're looking to put out notice several days.
Yeah, usually it's the Thursday before a meeting, the following week. So in that notice, we wanna know who's meeting, so which governmental body is actually meeting, the date of the meeting, the time, the place and location, and then a fair notice of the subject matter that's to be discussed or acted upon at that meeting. So that's important because it gives our public fair notice of what's about to be discussed, to give them notice of the affairs of government, to give them notice about the importance of the meeting, and maybe to let them know whether they should be present to observe those meetings, or if there's an opportunity for them to participate, for them to be able to participate and share their input with our public officials. So that minimum of 24-hour notice, it can be short, but it's to fairly apprise the public of the importance of governmental business.
And while we often give members of the public or residents an opportunity to comment on meetings, that's not necessarily required, but that opportunity to know what is important, to be present, to observe the debate, and just to be aware as informed residents of issues that are coming before city and applies to state government as well. That's the key thing. So when you're looking at an agenda, really the issue that we review as well is, does it give reasonable notice to folks to know what the subject matter is, make a decision for themselves, whether they want to attend or perhaps reach out to an appointed or elected member of the city to comment on it. An agenda is the next point. So we have public notice, that needs to be out at least the day before, and then the agenda is obviously part of that information and then helps keep your meetings running smoothly. So on the agenda process, it's not only part of that notice so people know what is being discussed, but then it's an excellent tool for you as a member, and especially the chair, but for all the members to direct what it is you're going to be discussing at that meeting. So it both informs, but then once the agenda is set, it also limits, because those are the only items that you can then discuss. If there's something new that comes up, and we're always wanting those sort of new ideas, that's for future meeting. So you can, when new ideas come up, you can work with your chair and with the staff liaison to set new ideas for future agenda. And then how about the location, the last prompt, like why is location important? What are some of the key things that are required under the open meeting?
For sure. Well, so location's important because, well, the members of the public, they have the right to attend and observe those meetings. And most of the time, we do allow a public comment period as part of our meeting, so there's some degree of limited participation. But the public needs to be able to feel welcome to attend these meetings so that they can observe the the governmental business as occurs can, is be reinforced of, public trust and interests in transparency so that our residents and constituents can know what is happening and can be there as governmental business is occurring.
So it's key that we pick a location that is public and that's accessible. Usually that means City Hall, but it can sometimes be other public buildings. We'll often hold meetings at the library. County will hold meetings, of course, at the county building, at the courthouse, and sometimes we'll hold joint meetings there. It can occasionally mean a private residence, a business, or perhaps a nonprofit. Like occasionally, maybe we'll meet over at the Chippewa Valley Museum or things like that. But they still have to be places that are broadly accessible to the public, open and with notice. And every so often, you might see one of us as staff opening a door again. And even if there's some noise outside, one of the things that open door means is literally it's showing that open door policy, and the Attorney General has given the direction that that's something that should be maintained, so folks that come down don't potentially feel excluded by seeing a closed door. So we keep doors open when we're holding a meeting. That's part of the welcoming process. A lot of these meetings can feel intimidating. People that aren't on the city boards, committee commissions, or staff that aren't used to it can really feel out of sorts a little bit showing up, especially the first time. So both how we physically set up the room and also how we conduct meetings, it's important to be welcoming to members of the public that attend, even if there isn't an opportunity perhaps to speak at that meeting, to let them know that they're appreciated for coming down and do what we can to let them know they're welcome and address any issues they may have. So those are the key issues with the open meetings law. Blake, thanks for joining me on your first session, our second out of the door. And
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, and thanks for listening. We'll see if we're re-up for a third and hopefully have a few more sessions for you coming up. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, I understand we got picked up for a second episode. Thanks.
You don't want to watch it again. All right. So, open meetings law, hopefully that was at least a little bit familiar for you. Not entirely new content, I'm hoping, but a good refresher nonetheless if you had heard it before. It's something that we do get pushback every once in a while from the public, making sure that things were properly noticed and that items were on the agenda, informing the public of what was actually going to be discussed. So the law requires it, and it's important that we follow it, of course. So if you ever have any questions that come up with respect to open meetings law, again, feel free to reach out. We're always available for questions on that, or the ethics that might come up, or anything else that we could help with. So don't be a stranger.
I wanted to just make one comment, if that's okay. As somebody that's gone through a lot of these types of trainings and have gotten all kinds of resources, I did want to say I just appreciate a new format and trying something different. I know there's all kinds of learning styles, and I'm sure for a lot of people, being able to watch like a 10-minute video is a lot, resonates better than being sent the state statute and reading like a 10-page document. So I just wanted to give that feedback because I know you shared this with sort of the trial. So thank you very much to staff that put a lot of work into creating that.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. We tried to make, like Steve was referencing in the video, we did 5 of them, at least so far, on different subjects, and they're all about similar length, so that nobody has to sit through, an hour plus at one shot. So.
One thing I just want to piggyback on that is that I also really appreciated the examples that they provided. It helped give some context to some of those bylaws and ethics, so it was nice to have those on it.
Okay, good. Appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you. I'll let you get on with your non-meeting without a quorum, but thanks.
All right, well, thank you very much. The next business agenda item is going to be the RDA district presentation.
I'm gonna step down for this one.
Okay.
So, good evening. This is going to be a very basic presentation. There's 2 districts proposed that are in front of council. Council postponed them for a month, looking for more input from the public. So we're hitting a few other events. There's going to be another public hearing session or a public discussion session on Monday. And then these 2 districts will eventually go back to council at the last session of July for another public discussion session and then vote by council. So we're just kind of walking through a little bit of what RDAs do, redevelopment authorities do, and then what the 2 districts are going to provide. So if you'll click on the next slide. This is just the presentation I did at council the last session, June. We're going to hit and sit on this one for just a little bit. The handout that was put in front of each of you is kind of a 4-page quick fact sheet on what redevelopment authorities do, what they're statutorily empowered to do, how they do that. It's more like the function of it. It's not specific to any districts. It's specific to what RDAs do in general. So the Redevelopment Authority is a public body established under Wisconsin law, and its intent as an organization is to remove blight, deterioration, obsolescence, and underutilized properties within the community and bring back and encourage, removing barriers that encourage new development is what they're intended to do. Biggest hang up most people think of is when you think blight, and it came up when we talked about the 2 districts. They think, oh, it's my building is being declared a rundown wreck, more or less. That's not necessarily, I mean, that is one of the things that makes an area eligible for blight is presence of dilapidated structures that cause public health or safety issues or create other issues in the community. But a lot of the areas that we look at are tied more towards obsolete planning and obsolete street design. If you look at any type of shopping structure built in the 70s and 80s, they have oceans of parking lot. They used front-loaded, frontage roads for access. That is discouraged in urban design today. That was popular in the 70s, 80s. That is not appropriate design. And today we understand that oceans of parking is terrible land use and creates vehicle-orientated transportation corridors instead of pedestrian-oriented corridors. So that is an element of blight. Obsolete zoning. Best example I always give of those areas is you look at the houses in the communities in between Chippewa River and the Ridge, just north of Madison Street, off Forest Street, any of those communities in there. Some of those houses, you can't hardly walk straight through the 2 of them. It's not even correct zoning setbacks. That's not even legally built today under current building codes. So these are obsolete zoning requirements, lots that allow too close presence in past zoning sections. They're not allowed, like I said, under current building codes. All those buildings in those, they're current uses, so they are legal non-conforming uses within those districts. But being legally non-conforming means that the owner is limited on what they can do with that property. They can only replace main mechanical systems. They can't upgrade or expand a kitchen. You can't upgrade a bathroom, things like that. That's prohibited because you're not allowed to increase the nonconformity. So property owners in some of these spaces get stuck with the property. They can't really do anything with it. They can't really improve it. It makes it hard to sell, hard to do anything with it down the road. So these are the types of things that redevelopment authorities are intended to help correct. Find these deficiencies, not just in buildings and structures, but just the way things were laid out in years past that is incorrect or poor planning today, and help remove the barriers that make these areas redevelopable again. I'm not going to hit every component on that. Definitely encourage you to look through the handout that's going in. Where do redevelopment authorities kind of pull their guidance or policy from? It's not intended to be a replacement for any existing policies in the city. Redevelopment authorities are a tool used to help implement what's already been approved through the community. Typical examples, comprehensive plans. That is a long process. We're actually undergoing our comprehensive plan update for the city right now. That's an 18-month process that will have a massive amount of community input. There'll be stakeholder meetings through neighborhoods, through associations, businesses. That driving policy is one of the foundation pieces that redevelopment authorities look to implement, is how do you advance the comprehensive plan. Strategic plans, the city council is working on their own strategic plan for council. So these are their strategic high-level goals for the community, and the RDA districts become a tool that help advance those policies that involve public input and elected official processes. Regional housing studies. We have a housing study from 2023. A consultant came in and conducted that and delivered the final product in 2023. So the output from that project, also when it comes to housing, the output from the housing chapter in the comp plan, again, sets policy, defines missing gaps or elements in the community. The RDA becomes another tool in the city's toolbox to help fill in those gaps and find out what's going on and trying to advance projects forward that meet some of the needs of the community that are identified through these various plans. Other adopted regional plans can be a part of that. Again, any development occurs under the zoning codes, the new land development ordinances that are passed last year. So we're not changing any policies or tools. They are intended to supplement what's going on and help deliver and implement what the council and what the city has passed through broader policy changes. The districts, what they do in the districts, they're a geographical area defined by meeting the state statutes for blight. There's a list of criteria that have to be met within the state statute. So redevelopment plans and districts that are created are intended to outline that the blights as defined by state statute, whether it's specific buildings or combination of poor street design, other impediments, obsoleted platting like I mentioned before, we're simply defining that this area contains those elements of blight, and the plan will intend to remove those through various strategies as another tool to help advance and remove those barriers. Specific projects can include studying redevelopment opportunities, preparing redevelopment plans, pursuing grant funding, other funding tools, address environmental or infrastructure barriers, partnering with developers, property owners, and support future redevelopment activities. Plans themselves do not automatically mean we're buying property, demoing property, or doing these things. These are activities that have occurred in some of the past districts. If you look at some of the ones in the past, the North Barstow area was a redevelopment district that's been very active in the last several years. It's from the Chippewa River north to 1 block north of Madison, and from the river to middle of Barstow Street. The Cannery District includes Oxford Avenue, the park that was done there, the Brewing Project, the Current and the Eddy, those two apartment complex, P&R Properties, new developments, the townhome units that were built up on the other end of that, and there's 2 other available spaces that are still, those have been active districts that were active in doing demolition, removing blighted structure, but that's not necessarily the sole purpose or function of an RDA district as it moves forward. Redevelopment districts are planning tools. This is the area that we look to operate in. This is the area that's defined that the RDA will be statutorily allowed to operate in. And let's work with the neighborhoods and the folks to figure out what can we do to help advance property owners' desires or goals. What's counter to the comp plan? What is obsolete planning or development that can't be invested in? So how can we remove those barriers to make those spaces more vibrant, more engaged, and current with the comp plan, current with new zoning or current zoning, those types of things. Development plan establishes long-term goals and priorities, identifies existing conditions and redevelopment opportunities. Again, that's defining that boundary that says there are blight elements by state statute in that district. That's the first thing they have to do before you can do anything else. You have to define the district and have it approved. RDAs can't operate within districts that aren't approved by state statute process, which includes approval by council. They are looking at potential redevelopment strategies and tools, performance measures and implementation approaches, and then legal authority for the RDA to act within the district when appropriate. Something that is unique for redevelopment authorities is that they do have condemnation authority, so they can move projects forward that you have an owner that's owned this building, they've done nothing, it's falling down, it's collapsing, they have nothing to do with it. Maybe they're an out-of-town owner that maybe he's practically forgotten they even own the property anymore. We actually have a few that are very much like that. The RDA has the ability to move that project into a development phase, move that to where they can require that process to be sold, acquire the project, even if the developer or the owner wasn't an interested seller. If it's deteriorating and blighting and meeting those elements of blight, the RDA can make that project come onto the market, acquire it, clear out the blight, clear out the barriers to that being a useful project, and then putting it back out to market for somebody who can redevelop it as a useful and connected and active parcel within the community. Things the RDA districts do not do, they don't approve the districts, and I'm talking about the district creation, the plan creation on the front end. These do not approve specific development projects, doesn't approve building designs, doesn't approve of property acquisition, demolition activities, doesn't commit city funds, doesn't change zoning regulations, and doesn't override any public processes. So until the district is active, it doesn't do any of these things. You can't do any of these activities. That occurs after the district is created, and you start planning how to implement blight removal within those spaces. Even when it's created, it doesn't impact anybody else's property unless it's a property acquired by the RDA. If it's doesn't meet the blight criteria and it's functioning, it's useful, and the property owner, the RDA has nothing to do with that. And any plans it does within that district have no impact on that developer unless they choose to make it so by working with the RDA as a group to help advance their plans for redevelopment. So RDA doesn't have to be the lead on any type of redevelopment within a district. They can assist a property owner who has ideas how to do this, but there's certain things they need help with. The RDA can be a tool to help them advance their own development ideas within a district. The flow of the process is again pretty straightforward. That's listed on page 3. Starts out with the community vision and input. That's the comprehensive plan that involves community input and outreach. It's the strategic plan set up by council. It's housing studies that are created, those types of activities that bring in broad community input and define that in a document. The step 2, which is creating the district plan, uses those as their governance of how they're going to activate an RDA district. If this area is defined in this type of use in the comp plan, then the RDA's district plan will be how do we help make that district what the comp plan shows it to be. And that's the guiding authority or the guiding policies that RDAs use to drive their activities in these different areas. Moving from the redevelopment plan, once the redevelopment opportunities emerge, the plan is created, then you can start looking at creating plans for it. What can we do with that? How do we implement very specific programs and strategies? And that goes back again to the more specific input, public input. Best example is the Cannery District. When the Cannery District was created, we created a master redevelopment plan when I came here in 2019. There was one created in 2016 that upon review, it was absolutely unable to implement it. The cost to do what was envisioned in 2016, there was no way to even begin to pay for it through the tax increment district that was created. So we redid the master redevelopment plan for Cannery District in 2019. We had stakeholder meetings with the neighbor association, with neighbors in general in the immediate vicinity, with all of the property owners. Each had their group. We sat down with them and our consultant, talked to them about what their vision of the area was, what their vision of development was, what they envisioned happening, and how to engage the community, and that helped define the master redevelopment plan that was implemented for the Cannery District. When the park was done, we repeated the whole process with the park staff leading that and a consultant. Went out to the communities, what do you want in a park? What do you want to see in your community park? And that helped define what the Cannery District is, which they had their formal ribbon cutting on July 4th. That's a great asset, and the process worked really well. We had community engagement, community participation, and that's the same process that are used as we define individual projects within a district once it's established. And then again, going down through, after going through all the processes, identifying properties, et cetera, that's where you might start seeing acquisition of properties and demolition of properties if needed, or rehab of properties. It's not only about tearing buildings down, sometimes it's about helping a property owner rebuild their property or getting in the hands of a developer who will renovate an existing project. Best example is the brewing project. I'm not sure how many people realize the brewing project in the Cannery District was a meatpacking plant. And it was a bad meatpacking plant when they acquired that building. It was still an heavy industrial district when that was acquired by Will Glass and his crew. And they had a vision for doing something different with it, not tearing it down. Most projects would have seen that thing demoed. They had a vision for reimagining and rebuilding that space, and they have an award-winning space now to do what they do with the brewing project. So redevelopment authority activity is not always about scraping it with a bulldozer and letting somebody else build something in. Sometimes it is about preserving and maintaining what's there and finding a new use for it, a new repurposed use for it. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what an RDA in general does. From a structure, it's a board of 9 members. It is 1 council member is a council representation. There's 1 member that is the city manager or city manager designee. Those are the 2 designated seats. The rest are pulled from the community. The RDA looks for folks who have experience in real estate or development or financing or mortgages, things that tie back into development and redevelopment. Those are the skill sets you need because they're looking at reviewing financial projections, they're reviewing plan developments. They need to have a base understanding what they're looking at to help really implement and recommend, hey, this project is a good one, this one maybe doesn't make sense for that area. Applicants are pulled from when there's an opening on a seat. It's pulled from the resource bank that's kept through the city website, so anybody that lives in the community can put their name in and request to potentially sit on the RDA, and we go through those applications when there's a seat. Recommendations and any applications are taken to council, and council selects those through their member, as the committee appointee group reviews those. They take their slate to the council, and then council makes final decisions on those who are appointed to the RDA. So those are kind of the last nuts and bolts pieces of the organization as how it operates. Any questions on that before we dive into the district information? All right, let's kick to the next slide. This is the first district that we're proposing. This identifies the Riverbend district. So this area is along the East Claremont, West Claremont corridor. Includes the former Sacred Heart facility, which is now the 900 district with what Heartworks and the group was looking to do there. It includes the medical district area, that's Marshfield Clinic and some of those spaces. It includes the old Shopko Plaza area. It drops down, as you can see on the map, drops down to West MacArthur and then curves across and then cuts back to the river and then just follows Short Street over to the river and then follows the river line coming back up. The comprehensive plan from 2015 identifies that industrial area from 37 west along Short Street as future medium and high density residential. That currently is all heavy industrial, which is a use that is now being discouraged along the river as poor use. So this is probably identified as potentially a more traditional type of RDA district that we've done in the past. Long-term acquisition of spaces as needed, and then seeing those transition those spaces back over to what is identified as the intended land use for this area through the comprehensive plan. This district is definitely bigger than what we've done in the past. One of the challenges we've seen in past districts with the RDA is when you define a district that's just a couple of blocks here, I'll use the North Barstow. It's from the river to middle of Barstow Street and from the Chippewa River to the middle of Barstow Street, from the Eau Claire River to Williams Street, so a block north of Madison. If it's not in that district, we can't do a thing about it within the RDA. And there's been opportunities to acquire parcels half a block away from that district. That would have been great redevelopments, but it's not in the district, couldn't do anything, and it's a long process to amend a district to try and do it. So part of the idea this time around was to do a broader district that can kind of capture opportunities within there that might pop up. We haven't targeted any site specific. The district representation does identify a few areas that meet the blight criteria. The Shopko Plaza area meets the blight criteria. It's an ocean of parking lot on a frontage road, and most of Shopko Plaza, the old Shopko strip center that's left, is vacant. There's maybe 2 tenants in there, so it meets blight criteria. It's an underutilized space with a lot of obsolete planning and street design. It also has street issues which are identified in the TID plan, which is pedestrian movement across a 4-lane road that is West Claremont. It is a challenging pedestrian bicycle connectivity moving across there. You have hospital space over there, you have the university over there. That lack of connectivity is a challenge. You also see some in certain areas, again, it's change of use. The industrial area that's existing there is changed from the comp plan. The comp plan envisions it being, again, medium to high density residential, could be mixed use. So it is an outdated use or obsolete use by the city's intended plans for that area. So those are the elements of blight that make that district meet the criteria set by the state standards. The plan would be, again, to work with property owners, work with projects to change those out, look to re-engage with projects, repurpose them, help either revitalize or potentially tear down and redevelopment of spaces that are just unsuitable to be changed or converted into a different use. We'll likely acquire longer-term, plans to acquire land as it comes for sale, slowly collect and see that shifting back into different uses. It may be, Shopko, when we started talking about this, the Heartworks and what was announced by the group that purchased the Sacred Heart building, we started this process 2 years ago. None of that was on the radar, and we were envisioning it may be a acquire and demo of that building. Now that there's an engaged group that's looking to redevelop that space, our role may be, where can we help you and meet your vision for that 24-acre campus, to see what happens in there. It may have nothing to do with demolition at all. It might be we're helping them go after grant funding, or maybe helping them do some changes in street or infrastructure access. So the roles of that can change within the district. But once the district is created, we can start talking to these folks individually and see, hey, how can we advance your ideas or advance your projects? So that's the one project, looking at the Riverbend District. If you'll kick to the next slide again, the conditions to address that we're looking to do through there is non-conforming uses that are identified in the comp plan, the pedestrian connectivity in the district that is severely lacking, the underutilized spaces, the excessive use of parking spaces and open concrete lots, frontage roads, all those things that are not designed in current urban design, hasn't been for the last couple or 3 decades. So be looking to help kind of reverse that. The second district that we propose is called the Core Reinvestment District, and that covers a good chunk of the downtown area. There are 2 qualified census tracts in those areas. That would be the Randall Park neighborhood area and the downtown core are both qualified census tracts, which mean they are designated by HUD as having a higher percentage of poverty in those areas. It also includes the Shawtown area, which is already seeing some redevelopment with Mount Washington. Again, when we started designing this, the Mount Washington project was not moving forward, and that was an area that was definitely needing some attention. This district is a little different. If you kick again to the next slide, there's a range of land use and parcels within this area. Again, 2 qualified census tracts, lots of vacant underutilized parcels. This is an area where we see a lot of the obsolete planning issues, a lot of non-conforming uses because the properties they don't meet current zoning requirements. And even with the zoning change, a lot of those still didn't become legally, they didn't meet the code. They're still legally non-conforming uses. We're seeing old properties, lots of nuisance activities in some of these ranges that sometimes stem from neighbors that have been declining. So the intent is to be able to look and operate within this district. We've called it the kind of a scalpel approach. Would you go to the next slide? The idea of we're not looking to do, because it's a big district, and we're not looking to go in like clear swaths of blocks of houses. What we're looking to do again is to identify through various means individual properties that are ideal for kind of kicking off redevelopment in areas. We looking at properties where the house is effectively abandoned, or vacant lots that have been the house has been lost to fire, it's been torn down, and it's sitting unused. Is there an opportunity for the redevelopment authority to go in and help bring affordable housing project back into that area? If it's a parcel that's damaged, there may be an opportunity for the RDA to help get it into the hands of another group. Habitat Humanity comes from mind that do rehab on properties, and it can be maybe brought back into a good condition, usable condition, becomes a home or a place for someone who needs a more affordable housing. Looking to address some of the pockets of blight. There's some areas that still have heavy industrial in the middle of residential. And again, some of these spaces go back to the 50s and earlier. How can we help transition those back into what's more appropriate use, which is mixed use or residential spaces, because these are areas that are in light commercial or residential neighborhoods. So helping get those transitions back to what's appropriate use for what's those areas are now effectively become or effectively zoned. It's a large district once again. It helps to be able to react or jump on opportunities that come up. House comes for sale that, hey, this house has been an issue for this neighborhood for decades. The owner's finally selling it. Can the RD now, it's in a broader district that has more space to operate. Can the RDA acquire the parcel, clear the issues that are going, oftentimes blight, and get it back as a affordable unit that's fits for the neighborhood and provides a good home for somebody who can afford it in those areas. So that's the broad intent of engaging in these areas. Part of what we're looking in both districts as well is how can we better engage the public to the riverfronts. That's always a long-term goal of the city. Is we're two rivers, the confluence area, but we still have a lot of chunks of our rivers that we really can't engage from the public, can't get access to. Whether it's steep banks or whatnot. Part of what we can do is look at longer-term developments or research on how can we better build out our areas along the riverfronts to better engage and provide public access for either amenities, maybe it's for business opportunities, maybe it's more public space that the general public can get in and better enjoy the river access that we have. How do we connect these different regions together through trail systems, enhanced trail systems, et cetera? All of these are things that an RDA can do once the district is established and they are able to start looking at very specific plans and research on these areas. So that's the broad level look at what we're looking to do in these two districts. Be happy to answer any questions that might be about these. Or any thoughts on what we're looking to do. If you let's kick back to the Riverbend district first. Any thoughts on that as a district, or what's intended, what's going on there, and what needs to maybe go on there? We're definitely looking back for input.
Council Member Schoen?
Thank you. I just was going to offer like a tiny bit of context too. And I served on RDA for the 2 prior years. I'm not currently on RDA, but just wanted to offer that RDA had been working for some time on developing these districts, and that group of board members worked really hard on narrowing down the geographic bounds and the plans that accompany them. For each of these districts, council last year in our CIP budget allocated $1 million to RDA, and I guess that's maybe a question to you, Aaron, just for context again, that they have the funds to kind of kickstart these new districts, and now the decision that council will be making next week is this where we want to focus our efforts? Does this make sense? And the decision actually went to council a month ago, and we postponed the decision specifically to get more input from the community. And I know we are starting maybe for feedback on the Riverbend district, but the other one, the core reinvestment district, as Aaron mentioned a couple of times, one of the focus areas is housing related and affordable housing specifically. And so I specifically asked that Hawk had an opportunity to be briefed on these plans and give input. And it's unfortunate that we have such a small turnout tonight for our meeting, non-meeting, we don't have quorum, but anyways, I just wanted to offer that background in case that's helpful in terms of like why we're looking at this and the type of feedback that might be useful before council takes a vote next week.
Yeah, thank you for the maps. It's really great to see. It's kind of hard to understand though without, really being there to see where like in the core investment district here, you have, you have a lot going on in there to determine what's actually, where you're going and what the focus is, because you do have some nice structures in there, or you have a lot of nice structures in there already. So building around that, existing things that are good or improving upon there, it's hard to understand right now. I just have to I'd love to see the map and kind of physically go out and see it.
Yeah,
So,
these areas, like this district includes a lot of spaces that are some of the oldest areas in the community. So they are the ones that probably have the biggest struggles in terms of street infrastructure, street layout and design. They're the ones that tend to have some of their bigger issues with like non-conforming uses within the zoning code or even within the building code. Like I said, you look up north of Madison Street, you get a lot of those units that are, you're almost walking sideways to walk between the two houses on two different lots. Doesn't even meet state building code requirements, let alone the zoning requirements. Historic Randall Park neighborhood with the university requiring students to live on campus as sophomores now, that area is changing. And the neighborhoods, the families that want to live there have for years been talking about, we want to see it change. They want families coming back into those areas as opposed to student rentals. So again, the RDA district can be a tool to help see some of those transitions occur that the neighborhoods are looking for. Can help transition some of this housing that's targeted for student rentals, but it's not gonna, a professional is not gonna rent something that, you're not gonna see 5 lawyers renting a big old 2-story house and each rooming in a room like you see college students. So what does that house need to become if it's not gonna target students anymore? Those are the types of things that we can look at as you look north of the Randall Park neighborhood. So in the Cannery Park district, there were projects in and around the Cannery Park on the fringes of it that are potentially really prime RDA projects. We talked to some of the property owners in the past just as general economic development follow-up meetings. And some of these businesses, they're like, we operate now, it's a commercial business, it's in an industrial zoned area, but my business, doesn't need to be here. And our building is rough enough. There's one in particular, it's just north of the RDA district, right off the High Bridge Trail. It was another former meatpacking plant. You can see the roofs off of 3rd Street. The building's rough. They've done a lot of interior improvements on that space, and it functions for what they knew, but it doesn't need to be there. And the owner has said, we can operate this anywhere. Is there a better use for our property when that property is almost 3 acres in a residential neighborhood that are surrounded by residentials? There's other types of examples of that where it's just leftover bits and piece properties here and there that didn't change over the years when everything else around them did. This becomes an opportunity to selectively help some of those parcels transition. Same thing as you come down and around towards Shawtown. Mount Washington was probably the one that was on everybody's mind when we looked to add that little dog leg there. They are actually transitioning that already, but there are other underutilized spaces, older houses. We know of some vacant lots and spaces like that. These are the areas these are some of the criteria that we look at. Some of our conversations were with the health department. They do their housing study every 5 years. This district incorporates a lot of the areas that have they struggle some of the most with housing condition. When they do the housing survey, they look at the condition of the spaces that are going on, and some of the lower scoring properties are the ones that have some of the biggest building conditions are in these districts that we've defined here. So again, the RDA becomes a tool to help reverse some of those, whether it's helping find programming funding through grants or whatnot that can help homeowners make improvements to their property. Is it acquiring some of those? Example, there's a project or parcel that we know of that the owner literally inherited from their grandmother. They live out of state. They keep the property taxes paid, but the door's been kicked in. There's been squatting in it. The police department has a file a couple inches thick from drug dealing out of that space, squatting and trespassing from an out-of-state owner who's probably not set foot in that house since he's inherited it. Does that need to still be there? Is there a better use for that site? Can we help that homeowner transition that house to something different? Or does the RDA purchase a property like that and they help make the transition directly through the organization? Those are the type of things that we look to analyze those spaces. It's not randomly grabbing and selecting spaces. It's how do we help better neighborhoods and provide projects that the city needs, the community needs, the neighborhood needs. Affordability becomes a big piece. There's the housing study. There's many things that we wish the housing study would have identified, and we are looking to correct a number of those in the comprehensive plan's housing chapter. But the one metric that the housing study in 2023 did reference is the city needs to pay attention to housing suitable for folks making less than 50% of the median county income. That's a challenging metric to hit without programs that are subsidizing construction costs, like low-income housing, tax credit housing, HUD programs, things like that. is there a way to do it without having to go through some of the state or federal programs? Is there a way to help developers who are doing some very affordable housing models, help them advance some of those projects in other areas? So that's, again, it's a tool that operates in these areas. And goes back to, again, the selection of a large area, because if you don't and the opportunities come up, you can't do anything unless it's in a defined area that's approved by the RDA to operate in. We're talking as much detail as we're allowed to talk about right now with these districts not being approved yet by council. We can't go any deeper. We can't talk any more detail. We can't start making any specific plans. We can't take anything to the RDA board. Hey, let's consider this for this site. We can't do any of that until these boundaries are established and it's determined that blight exists, and the RDA as an organization, as a tool, can help remove those barriers to remove those blight conditions. But yeah, it's way bigger than what we've ever done before. This is bigger than the Riverbend district that we're proposing as well. But the intent is to be able to operate within the district over an extended period of time. We don't want to get wrapped up and say, hey, we finished it. Now we have to find a new space. Now we have to go through the full approval process, determine the blight, bring all these things together. This gives some opportunity for the RDA to be able to operate in a district over an extended period of time. Any other thoughts or comments on that one? Maybe kick back to the Riverbend district again. Again, just anything stands out on this district or anything we should be thinking about?
I just love the idea that you're utilizing the river, because I've been here for many, many years living here, and you know, my wife and I, you know, where this town was built on the river, and you know, we go out to have dinner, we go wherever, and I don't know where one place I can sit down and have a dinner and see the river in all of Eau Claire. I find it just unbelievable. And maybe I'm missing something, but this is what our town is, and I like that you're trying to do that, or that is one of your focuses, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. We hear that regularly. You know, you can go do stuff in Chicago or here, or the epitome of a Riverwalk district is San Antonio, Texas, where you can literally sit in a cafe chair and almost dangle your hand in the river as it flows by while you're eating your meal. Most people don't realize that was a $30 or $40 million canal project and fully artificially created, but that's what folks expect to see when you talk about a river community, a city that has, you know, two prominent rivers in it. That's the type of engagement they would like to see in there. So one of those challenges is, you know, where are we allowed to do it from an engineering standpoint? So that requires a DNR study and an engineering study. Where is it appropriate where we have space, whether it's publicly owned space or privately owned space, that, hey, there's a better use for that area. That's some of the planning and layout development that you can do for an area. A lot of what the RDA was really successful with particularly the Cannery District, is kind of laying out a concept for master plan and then inviting folks who do development work to come in and say, hey, I can execute that piece of that plan or that piece of that plan. And the property owners are like, you know, I'd love to see my property be a part of this. What can I do to advance that forward? And then we help them make connections. We help them connect to program. We help them connect to financing and implement pieces of that. Most of that will be handled at the RDA level. If they're acquiring land purchases, approvals for doing like master development studies, those are all handled by the board. That's one of the things that's unique about the RDA, is for a lot of what they do, they're fairly independent. Once it's established and the district is established by council and setting the guidelines of what drives policy, the RDA board will be able to execute they're a little more flexible because they can execute at that level. Now, council will still get involved, and plan commission will still get involved when you talk about individual projects. If a project comes forward and wants additional funding, we've seen tax increment financing be assistance in some of our districts. That's a council decision solely, so those projects will still go back to council for further input. And we've been really successful in particularly multifamily housing projects that ask for assistance from the city to negotiate levels of affordability locked in and guaranteed in their rent rates. That's been part of the direction from council, and we've been doing that. It's more of workforce type rents. The PNR properties was the first one that we did. 80% of that, 20% of the units have to be set aside for folks making 80% county median income or less at rent rates that are appropriate for those levels. That unit also includes a handful of units that are priced and guaranteed to be rent rates at folks making 60% county median income. The Paragon that's being built off Old Town Hall Road is the same thing. That TID district council made the determination, and we now have 20% of those units at 80% median county income and 5% of those units at 60% median county income, guaranteed, and it's locked in and required for X number of times. So there's still a lot of opportunities for council to provide additional direction when a developer within one of these RDA districts looks to do or looks for additional assistance. Planning Commission still reviews and approves plans and site plans, et cetera, where it's appropriate, or staff doing administrative approvals, again, follows the appropriate LDO codes and requirements. So the city still has a lot of footprint or a lot of fingerprints on what occurs within these districts as they develop moving forward. That's all I had. We originally were looking to see if the city would, or the Hawk would be, make some vote on some sort of recommendation, but as this is not a quorum one, this is just for informational purposes. If you have any thoughts or questions or ideas, definitely feel free to reach out to our department, the community development or the economic development department within the city. We're happy to answer any questions, provide additional information. I'm happy to reach out and sit down with another group that wants to find out a little bit more about it. That's part of what we do. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so our next business agenda item is going to be staff updates.
So I'm not doing anything tonight, but hanging out. So I'm going to introduce Kaya to come up and share some data she's been working on housing and stuff. Tonight she'll have eviction and transit, the vouchers we do for the homeless in the community.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Kaya. I'm the GIS and planning intern working with Aaron and Billy. But yeah, as she said, I'm working with eviction and transit data right now. Just kind of looking at some spatial patterns across the city and things like that. This first map here might be kind of hard to see on the screen in terms of coloring, but this just shows all of the filings for small claims eviction cases across the city of Eau Claire from January 2023 to June of 2026. Notably, this just matches any data connected to a specific street address, so it kind of neglects the idea of any like specific apartments or things like that. Or if in one given year there was multiple evictions for a specific address, it doesn't really account for that as it's just a one-to-one join. But if there is any layering of specific addresses, that's kind of across the 3-year span. Notably, I try to make them a little bit brighter. Again, it might be hard to see, but those bright green dots and the sort of like hot pink dots are kind of greatest interest, I would say, because those are the cases that did rule for judgment of eviction and or money. Notably, as you can kind of see, there's some greater clustering towards the center of the city and downtown area, a little bit north of that. So yeah, we're kind of just looking at some data and breaking that down throughout the years. Backtracking a little bit, so we're looking at some assessed values for the residential properties across Eau Claire. Those brown dots are below or on the lower end of valuation. So I used for a benchmark, their appearance is a little more white on the maps there. I looked at the median household income, which is about $66.5 thousand, as well as the average household income for Eau Claire, which is around $90,000, and then multiplied that by 3 for standard affordability guidelines to create that 190-ish to 270 thousand range for what seems like most average affordable across the city. So again, those brown dots are things that are below that on the lower end, and then any of those green dots are on the higher end for valuation and affordability. Again, notably, those brown dots are also centered around those areas that we noticed those higher levels of eviction.
Commissioner Lash?
How often are those assessed values updated?
That is a great question.
I can find some more information to get to you. I know they're getting ready. They were gonna do it this year, but they're holding off till next year, to do a total reevaluation of the city. I don't know if they have them on a rotation similar to the health inspections, but I'll find out and send that to you.
Okay. Just in a consumer way and as a homeowner, well, 2025 is probably a good number to pull because we're in that strange inflated value place right now. You know, things just skyrocketed after pandemic. So 2025 would be apt, I think. But the years before that, I don't know. It's just a strange time that we're living in where the rates just skyrocketed. And so assessed value is, I'm skeptical right now. Not of your work, of, you know, what the real value is and how that's affordable or not affordable, or how long someone's been there, or if they bought on that price tag, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just really pretty layered.
Yeah, for sure. And that would be interesting to compare from past years as well. So, go to the next slide. Awesome. So this is just breaking it down by year for these next few slides. So this one is for 2023. On the left, it's just showing, breaking it down by month of when those eviction cases were filed. And then on the right, it just shows the resolutions for those. It was kind of hard for me to point out any patterns in terms of higher months that these cases might be filed in, at least just looking at this one, as well as any resolutions. But again, the main thing is that the ones for judgment for eviction and judgment for eviction and money tend to still be in those lower valuation areas. This is for 2024, kind of the same thing. 2025 and 2026 through what we have so far through June. So obviously there's less on here, but I believe for the city so far, we're at 47 cases filed. Comparatively, over those past 3 years, by the end of the year, it kind of ranged between like 60 to 90. So sitting at 47 filings by June, it's kind of hard to predict if that will slow down throughout the rest of the year or anything like that. Kind of adding on to that, the average amount owed for those judgment for eviction and money, it seemed fairly steady 2023 to 2025, but we did see a jump by about 800 for this year. Again, hard to kind of navigate that, being that we still are missing half of the data for the year yet, and how that could project going forward. As for just judgments for money owed, pretty steady decline since 2024. Continuing this, we have some of the cases filed by month and year. Notably, I would like to point out the table on the bottom there. So the items highlighted in red was calculated by taking 100%, so the whole year, and dividing it by 12. So if cases were filed consistently for each month, like the same number of cases, it would have been 8.33% for each month. So those items in red show that it would be above that average, again, hypothetically, if there were the same number of cases filed per month. So notably through that, just for the complete years of 2023 through 2025, because we don't have the full data for 2026 yet, there were more cases filed around spring and late summer. And then a little transition. Before I move on, do we have any questions about any of that? Any comments?
Commissioner Lash?
Anecdotally, I would think that March and April is when folks are, well, previous to that, running out of money because of holiday and cost of heating. So that's when we hear from a lot of people that are in need of housing. July, August, and September, I don't know why that would be, especially in a town that hinges so much on June 1 for like leases and such. So that one's confusing me. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Again, not your work, but like what is happening there?
Yeah, for sure.
For March and April, I actually feel it I mean, I see what you're saying about holidays, but that's also tax return season. So to me, it's like, well, yeah, some extra income coming in during that time as well.
Yeah, I think just looking into more context like that would be really neat, and just tying that into finding more reasoning for why it may look that way, especially once this year is complete too, and kind of seeing if that would change those percentages at all. But yeah. Now transitioning into, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Just so you know, though, the eviction of something that, because you're taking care of the day that the eviction happens, the issues of an eviction are probably minimally 2 months prior to that month's eviction. So if you're looking at a month, that means the problem started in March. The problem started in January to get to that point. So just remember that you're looking at 2 to 3 months prior.
That's the date it's filed though, right?
Yes.
And then it takes 2 months after that to actually get evicted.
About 6 weeks-ish, but you're filing as a property manager or a person who has a property management company. The day of file this is a problem that has happened minimally going on starting 2 months prior. So, you're saying the same thing, correct?
Yeah, you have a very, very good point with that.
We're just not, oh, this is the first time that they've been late in rent, we're filing an eviction today, and that's how this is going. That's not, you're minimally 2 months prior. So finding the month, in my opinion, is gonna be, to correlate that with some type of situation, might be difficult to
Right.
understand.
That's a very good point. Thank you for that.
And what do you think, Kaya, is, or Billy or Aaron, why do we look at eviction cases so much? What are we looking to understand?
One, to understand if evictions are going up, down, so we can react to them quicker. But also looking in areas where there's high ones. We can also look at landlords, and if we suddenly have somebody who evicted 50 people this year, we might be like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So just trying to, the overall housing, just trying to get a bigger picture, and
Okay.
and I think we wanted to look a lot of data we're looking at now. We're looking at pre-COVID, COVID, and seeing what's happening post. See if we go back to what we were, or what's going to happen. So
Sure.
it's an interesting time to be doing data.
I appreciate what you're saying, especially working in an organization, and I have this understanding of the city's work as well, preventing eviction. Like everything they do to work with someone in their violations or whatever they're called, and particularly in our organization, we're doing tenancy support. And so I appreciate what you're saying about trying to pinpoint where it's really happening, and if that is an organization rather than individuals. I mean, they're not innocent of it, but
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You would have something that would be interesting to see is who's actually doing the evictions. What are the companies, and how many units do they have? I mean, if they have 30 units and they evict 10 people a year, that's a lot. And what is the process to prevent that? We go through a situation where we try to get people on payment plans. We try to get them with help with organizations to help with their rent. And there's a lot of things that you can do to try to, we don't want to evict people. It's a really bad case for everybody. So I don't know if there's something to say is, who do you find is evicting them? I would think that would be the question more than anything else.
So we have that data. It's all public information. We don't share like a list of the top 10 because we don't really have any bad ones that we've identified. So we don't want to put somebody out there who didn't have a ton, but they took some chances on some individuals, and so they had higher evictions than others. So that we just don't want to put that out there. But if we notice a problem, we definitely would.
Billy's absolutely spot on that. Part of it's just root cause analysis. You're looking for trends, you're looking for patterns, you're looking for locations. As you dive deeper into it, if you start finding common links or causals, you can start taking steps. We haven't done it for a while, but I know there was a landlord that's prohibited from owning rental property in the city of Eau Claire that stemmed from issues. And this type of data analysis is how you start building, determining that somebody's there, there's an issue, and then digging deeper into what the issues and what the areas are. And now it's, oh, suddenly we have a cause, we have a common link. It's this property owner across is the thread that links all these together. Now let's dig deeper into what's causing that and what actions can be taken. And it to the extent where there was a property owner that was required by the courts to sell all their rental properties and is prohibited from owning rental properties in the city limits of Eau Claire. So it can't have direct impacts. It's a long process, but it starts by digging through the data and finding out what's going on with the data.
Something I wanted to point out, because I'm just trying to think what would be causing these in July, August, and September. And this is my thought, is maybe it's because a lot of new leases tend to start in May and June 1st. Not all of them, but there is a really good handful that start then. And so maybe it's because they're new leases, May, June, and so it's giving them that time for us to do the process of the eviction, them to fail paying rent, things like that, to finally file in July, August, September. And nobody wants to be evicted in winter. So people hopefully are paying, and maybe that's why there's less. I'm not sure, but that's just kind of a little thought. Todd, do you have anything on that?
I don't know. I think it's just random. I mean, it is. I know that you have a 11% here, and the lowest one is 6.62% in January, or 6.28. There it is. Relatively, it's pretty spaced out pretty nicely. I mean, that's a poor phrase, I guess, to say for evictions, not nicely, but it's evenly spaced out. So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure that out. I don't think there's a reason.
Alrighty, we'll transition into the transit pass data. So we're just looking at the distribution by month and year in these graphs here. So from 2023 to 2026, same kind of time frame. Again, kind of harder to identify patterns, especially in 2025. That one seems a little more stagnant in terms of distribution by month. 2023 had quite a dip in fall and then picked back up in the colder months, so like winter. 2024 kind of scattered throughout, picked up in the summer and fall months, so kind of changing with the season, I would say. And then 2026 so far was only through May, and this one seems like probably the most stagnant in terms of distribution, but I did hear that there's been a little more regulation on distribution and how many different organizations or agencies can give out for transit passes. So this is kind of going off of that. That chart in the top left is self-reported reasoning for requesting a bus pass. So just based on that, it seems to be the most popular reasoning of seeking employment. As for the bottom right graph, it's a little flip-flop. So the far left is present day compared to past. Again, 2026 is only through May, so I don't know if it's going to meet or be close to the 2025 totals for bus passes, just based on it being under half of the total from the previous year. But otherwise, there seemed to be an upward trend since 2023 of dispersing those bus passes.
How did the funding change in those years? Was it afforded the same amount of funding for bus passes each of those years?
So in 2024, in April's when we started the monthly ones, I don't remember if that's when we got them for half price or if it was the next year. So for our funding, we would have had more once we started paying half price for them. But the main things that changed is prior, so 24, we started seeing a bunch of distribution. So the group that does it, they decided they wanted to limit them over the summer so that they'd have plenty going into the next winter. 25, we changed it around. I started giving out just like 50 or 100 at a time. And then when they were closed out, I'd give them more. Right now, they're doing, it's budgeted for 120 a month. The way I did it, I looked at average over the year. Now they're giving out 120 a month. And so that's some of the, that's probably the biggest changes. They're just giving out exactly. We'd give more to Western Dairyland and Sojourner because they gave out the most. Now that they're split evenly, there's a lot more people going over to DHS once Sojourner and Western Dairyland run out, and you'll see that coming up here.
Perfect. Yeah, so kind of just adding on to that, this, again, breaks it down by year, but also by agency and how many they were distributing for that year. Notably, back in 2023 and then into a little bit of 2024, the library was distributing passes. I believe they are no longer doing that, or at least they didn't appear to be when looking through this data. But yeah, and then most recent years, so 2025 to 2026 is when we start to see that shift for the three main agencies, so DHS, Sojourner House, and Western Dairyland, and especially towards this year, as Billy had mentioned, that more even distribution of passes. And then again, this is by agency per month and year. I guess just kind of looking at this year so far, again, a little more consistency throughout. Previous year, a little less from DHS, and Sojourner and Western Dairyland kind of taking that lead, as Billy had mentioned. And then previous years, it was kind of just all over the board. But yeah, so just kind of showing some progression of how that's been more regulated and more evenly distributed. I believe that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for her? Any other ones? All right.
Thank you.
All right, housing project update. I guess I skipped ahead. I don't know if you guys have noticed, Aaron mentioned it, out in Shawtown. The building's back on. They're working on it. They had a topping off ceremony this past week, so that's really good news that one's finally moving forward. I don't think we have any other ones, and I don't believe I have other updates, except the announcement the matrix is going to council. We normally don't do a public hearing for it, but we decided we'd do a public hearing on Monday, and then council would vote on it on Tuesday. So. And then next meeting's August 12th, and unless somebody else has something.
Commissioner Lash?
Where is the matrix published, if any citizen wanted to see it?
It's not published yet because it hasn't been passed, but I can send the final one to you.
Wait, so there's a public comment on it, but they can't see it?
It'll come out in the council packet, which I believe is mailed out tomorrow.
Okay.
But I can also send it directly to all HAWC members.
Yeah, so just then, when does like a normie get to see it?
It'll be published on our city website tomorrow.
Okay.
It's usually the Thursday before we meet. Sometimes there's delays and it comes out Friday, but it's posted on our city website. Yeah. And I share it out on social media if you need to look for it and need help finding it.
All right, any other announcements from anyone? No? All right, well, since we're not at quorum, I don't think there's a regular adjournment. So thank you, everyone.
Guess when you don't have me up there. Nope, I understand, I gotta go that way too.
How's it going? What's new? Everything's new.
You missed everything.
I missed everything while I was gone. Yeah.
So how's
He's good. He's good. He's like such a good.
the picture?
Yeah, he's like always smiling, always happy. He's like a really chill little baby. So I realize he sleeps for 2 or 3 hours at a time, but not as much. I guess it's like started. So he's just like walking. Yeah. He's so fun. Yeah, he started to do a great job. Yeah. Been back for like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks now. So yeah, have fun. What are you doing? I feel like we need to get back together, and I saw Bill on yesterday for the RC.
So we are, first off, we are seeing how we can make use of.
You too. Thank you.
Districts to do the race.
Yeah. Okay.
Fundraiser and stuff.
Through the radio.
No, that was strictly through the tax districts.
Oh, okay.
10, 11, 8, and 13.
Yeah.
They cover a good chunk of county where a lot of them are.
Yeah, that's
And then within a half mile of the boundaries, we can run, so we
Okay.
are,
That's pretty far.
we can force the deal. Probably more probably start looking at what to do with those. I sent you, I left you a voice message, I don't know if you go through it yet.
Incinerators, I sent it to Matt.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I know DNR doesn't have any permitting on this, and I haven't talked to them yet, so I know there's no permitting part from
Yeah.
DNR. I think it's not really crematorium, but crematorium.
It's like similar, but not really.
Yeah, and I know there's still the Wisconsin administrative.
Yeah. So we do incinerator inspections and permitting, like locally, so I'm not sure, like they.
And that's what I was wondering, it's gonna be organic.
Yeah.
It's not locking in,
Okay.
even though it
And that's one
randomly
thing I wasn't
should.
sure is if it had.
Thanks,
certain
Billy.
like-
You have a good
Thank
night.
you. Great job tonight.
Has to, I just think that they do it by ordinance.
Okay, because the building code, all the building code says is that.
Even though it wasn't. Okay, no, after, that's fine, because we don't record
The state
any of
building
that.
code.
So
Okay.
we're ready, and it wasn't
So
an
we're,
official
it's
meeting,
true, so,
so.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
so where it is,
Yeah.
it is their research involved.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this will be in the Sacred Heart facility. They have, means to take care of what they have, but they are looking at maybe considering the facility.
In their old facility or new?
In the
In Sacred.
Sacred Heart space, they'll be, like, say, be in the lower area.
Yeah.
They'll have to do a bunch of work to do
Other
that, but
stuff.
they're just
Has it
exploring
had
something.
any sort of like
And I would have thought there was some level of incinerator,
a
hospital for
medical
hospital waste,
I mean,
but
Henderson, like, well, Amplify, where my husband works, they have something.
it might have been that they hadn't took it out at some point in time. Those things are expensive to
They're
run.
really